Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about this incredible storm system that is currently moving in across the western United States. It is dropping a lot of snow across the Sierra Nevada. Will be dropping a lot of snow across the Bitterroots of Idaho, the Wasatch into Utah. And once this thing moves out into the plains, it will develop potentially into a powerful blizzard. It will be bringing, obviously, heavy snow, fierce winds, some severe weather. The severe weather where it does occur will be pretty strong, but it's not going to be too widespread, thankfully. And there could be also the kind of interaction with this system and the remnants of Hurricane Nicole, which right now is still a tropical storm, but it's forecasted to hit Florida, make a landfall on it within the next day as a Category 1 hurricane. So a lot of things going on in the weather community, definitely a lot of action to stay on top of. But what I do want to say is that following this storm system, it seems as if a vast majority, meaning up to 90% of the United States will be dealing with cooler than average temperatures, and a good part, I would say about 50% of the United States could be dealing with just some downright bitter cold. Again, relative for this time of the year, it won't be the coldest year you've ever seen, but you will be saying to yourself probably, wow, it's only mid-November and it's blah 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 degrees and blah blah blah, or depending on where you live. So I just want to talk about all of that. Let's get started. So right now I do want to show you the radar of this whole beast, and again, its impacts are already being felt quite broadly. You can see this is all the moisture that is being pumped up out ahead of this. You could see there is some decent rain shower activity going on across Minnesota, Wisconsin. Again, nothing severe here. There are some isolated rumbles of thunder, some moderate heavy rain pockets. There are some strong southerly winds starting to develop. That is causing some red flag warnings and some fire concerns, as this thing is obviously producing very strong winds pumping this warm air up here, which allows for the rain snow line to be very far towards the north. But once the system moves out, it kind of takes advantage of this energy, this warm air, and it explodes into let's just say a very powerful system. So again, a lot of moving pieces with this. So first off, let's go to California. Right, notice that we do have a lot of snow. Again, it has been pretty much snowing all day. You can see some of this was very impressive, especially earlier on when it kind of peaked its intensity. Several inches of snow potentially an hour in some of these locations during the peak snowfall rates. And do notice that there also was quite a bit of rain for central Southern California, San Francisco, and now even as you can see, this is 1:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. As I put this into motion, you can see that it's still raining quite heavily across Southern California at this current time when I'm recording this video. You can see the snow is slowly starting to abate across portions of northern Sierra, and they will continue to do so through the overnight hours. However, there could be still an additional several inches of snow across these areas, so it's not all said and done. And that's just for the Sierra. As obviously this thing moves more inward, eastward, there will be a lot more snow for Nevada, Utah, again, Idaho, Wyoming, and then eventually out into the plains. And obviously that's where the cold front could develop and potentially merge with Hurricane Nicole. So yeah, that's what currently the radar looks like. Already a lot of activity, and this will continue. Weather Ready Nation Map by the National Weather Service, a great source for your, if you want to know what you're gonna get in Montana or Idaho or Iowa or Indiana. Go to the National Weather Service. It's the best agency for forecasting. Not weather.com, not AccuWeather. As good as you may like those things, this is definitely by far the most reliable source of weather information. And do note that the watches, warnings, advisories, all associated with this system, and then again with that hurricane itself. Obviously, with the strong winds from the south, as I was saying, we have various areas of red flag warnings across Colorado. We have some high wind advisories or watches. So again, a lot of wind advisories further out west, and you can see more fire danger potentially even as far east as Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and whatnot. And obviously a massive area of winter storm watches across the northern plains, calling for anywhere between 6 to 12, maybe even some 18-inch amounts across those areas. So that is that in terms of the things that are going on currently. And now let's start progressing into the future. So GFS model, it's done a pretty good job with this system, and notice that again, there it is, positioned at midnight today. This is 6 a.m. a.m. tomorrow. You can see it's slowly starting to move away from California. Still snowing there, but now more into Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, starting to reach into Montana. Notice the precipitation, these rain showers that are occurring across the north right now will continue, and obviously we will have very strong winds getting pumped up from the south, so that will be bringing a lot of warm air tomorrow, and that's why a good portion of the United States east of the Rockies tomorrow and on Thursday will be very, very warm. Potentially breaking highs. I know in my area here on Thursday, we could be looking at a record high because of this system and the amount of moisture or amount of winds and warm air it's pumping from the south. Alright, notice as this thing moves out into the plains, it quickly starts developing. You can see the cold front at first isn't too impressive, which is why the severe weather will stave off till around the central Iowa time frame, or I guess timeline. So it won't be coming off the Rockies, punching and throwing its worst out in terms of the severe weather. It's going to wait a little bit for that. Notice at this point also early Thursday, maybe late Wednesday, the impacts are definitely going to be picking up from Hurricane Nicole. Again, the exact track of that is also still unknown. For exact details, refer to your National Hurricane Center. I do want to say there has been a slight trend in the past day since I recorded my last video, keeping the snow system a bit weaker. So notice, if you recall, that previous model runs of both the GFS and European kept this system, let's just say, more intense, more powerful. It developed into a stronger system, much more lower in millibars. Still, there will be obviously very heavy snowfall rates, but it's basically just a bit quicker. It's a bit further towards the east, the low pressure, and just not as much snowfall will be occurring across, say, the Dakotas, but it could be, as a result, a bit more widespread. Notice it spreads into a good portion of northern Minnesota. Again, because of this high pressure that is slamming into this low pressure, there could be, again, a tight wind gradient, potentially creating some blizzard conditions. And do note that this is where that cold front is going to be at its most severe Thursday during the late afternoon. It may not look like it on the radar, but trust me, this is going to be a pretty nasty cold front, definitely delivering a fair punch of severe weather. Notice at this point, potentially Hurricane Nicole could be making another landfall if it does move out into the Gulf of Mexico after making landfall in Florida. But this time it makes landfall across the panhandle of Florida, and all its moisture associated with it gets kind of whipped up by this cold front from this system, which at this point, again, you can see is weakening both the cold front and just the system overall, as we have a lot of dry air that comes swooping in right around it, so that kind of kills off any of its potential development, and you can see it moves out of there pretty quickly. But look at this surge of moisture. So if you recall, just a few days ago, the models were hinting at a scenario where there could be a surge of moisture across the northeast, but they kept it, let's just say, relatively offshore and off the coast. But now they are really showing this far inland, affecting areas, again, as far east as west as Ohio, maybe even Indiana, Kentucky. And it's not just extreme western or eastern Ohio. It's even the western portions, and maybe even Michigan getting directly impacted by some showers and storms from this hurricane kind of remnants and the moisture associated with it. Again, very heavy rain events. So not only do we have to deal with the heavy snow across the west, the potential blizzard across the northern plains, that severe weather across the southern central kind of, central plains, and then this extreme surge of moisture across the northeast, which, again, the models have been really intensifying this and making this a lot more troublesome and worrisome than what we previously thought. So notice, though, by the time we do reach late Saturday into early Sunday, this thing is pretty much out of here, moving into Nova Scotia, southern Canada. Again, the remnants obviously still being felt there, but even there, it moves out within the next few days there, or sorry, next few kind of 6-hour shift that I have on this model on here. So by Sunday, it's going to be out of here. Notice some models are starting to paint some sort of a maybe secondary system right behind this, maybe developing into some sort of a nor'easter, maybe some sort of a light snow system. Whether or not this happens, we'll have to wait and see. But what we do know, that's very clear and evident, is the amount of cold air that moves in behind this system, which is also going to be very, very, very impressive. So let's take a look at some of those cold temperatures, exemplified by this anomaly graph. So again, this is above average out ahead of this storm, those warm southerly winds behind it. Very cold air, again, pretty much as anomalous, if not even more, compared to that warm air ahead of it, which again will be impressive. I mean, areas across the northeast will be seeing 60s and 50s, for this time of the year, all the way to the Canadian border. As I put this into motion, again, notice if we do have that snowpack across the north, which seems likely, it will kind of act as a highway for this cold air to go pretty far to the south. Again, I mean, literally 90% of the United States will be covered in below average temperatures. This includes even the far-reaching peninsula of Florida. And yeah, as I put this forward, you can see that the cold air is stubborn. It doesn't get pushed away. There's not going to be any big storm system most likely following this that's going to be able of pumping up a ton of warm air and kicking this cool air out. And at times, honestly, you could see Thursday, November 17th, there could be days where literally almost 100% of the United States is below average to some degree. So yeah, it's going to be quite a change on from what we've been seeing, especially with all these temperature swings. It's going to be consistently chilly, but it's going to be chilly, and that's a problem. And chilly for some of the northern plains is a bit of an understatement. As you can see, some reinforcing shots of cold air could leave a lot of these areas shivering with up to negative 20 in Fahrenheit. And for November, obviously, that is very close to being, well, just record-breaking territory, and something that definitely will be a rather potential, again, historic event. Notice elsewhere, though, the anomalies are still significant, right? So I know for my area, we haven't dipped below 35 degrees. It honestly even hasn't felt that we have even had our first frost, and we truly haven't, right? And look, I mean, right here in my area, northern Illinois, will be 16, 13 degrees. That's cold. That seems very cold for me, so I'm sure a lot of folks looking at this map right now, choosing their location, 24 in Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, that's definitely considered chilly. And you can see this is day in, day out. There will be brief, days where some moderation occurs, but again, look at some of these temperatures up here. It's not going to get this cold across, obviously, Illinois, Indiana. That's exaggerated because of the snowpack that's going to be there. But that's going to allow it to go a bit further to the south than expected. And look, a lot of areas, even during the day, won't be getting above freezing. Again, not everyone, obviously. But, all of Iowa, all of Nebraska, that's definitely early. And the fact that this thing could hang around for as long as it may, according to these models, is definitely also impressive. Again, some moderation potentially as we see some sort of a different pattern taking shape towards late November as possible, but still not a all-out very warm pattern developing, and a lot of models still keep a lot of cooler just to the north potentially coming right in. So you can see the GFS does end up showing a bit of warm air, but again, even that seems kind of wishful thinking. So let me show you some of these snowfall amounts, because I got a little carried away with some of that cold air that I was talking about, but let's leave it at around hour 200. So it's just kind of the snow from this system that we have going on right now. Notice across the western United States, obviously very impactful snow across the Sierra. All the mountain ranges pretty much getting very good amounts of snow. Once that system moves out, it will be dropping. Again, even the weaker version of this system, slightly weaker version, I shouldn't say of the system, but of the snowy side of this compared to yesterday, will still leave a lot of areas with over a foot of snow, making it a very impactful system. I know it's pretty far to the north, North Dakota. They're used to this type of stuff, and yes, they definitely had bigger snowstorms. They probably will even this year. It's just that it's the first one of the year that's that significant. It could definitely catch some people off guard. The first one, even for the cold-hardy northerners. Yeah, it's also the fact that behind this, the amount of cold air that will settle in is also going to be a bit of a shock for some of your folks there. Notice there could be a pretty decent snow swath well into Minnesota, into southern Canada, southern Ontario. Cities like Thunder Bay will be getting some snow out of this, and you can see that stripe that stretches through southern Ontario and central Quebec, and maybe even to northern Maine potentially. You're also seeing a bit of snow. Again, lake effect snow belts will be kind of turned on after this, as the cold air washes over the lake. So expect some lake effect snow if you live in a typical lake effect snow belts. So that's the GFS snowfall amounts. Let me quickly show you the European. Again, I will show you actually right now how the European plays it out with that precipitation type graph. I know a lot of people like looking at this stuff and comparing how the different models show. Obviously, I won't take as long as I did with the GFS showing you it, because the general macro details are the same amongst the models. There are some details, the main one being that the European keeps the system even more quicker moving than the GFS did. You can see, so it's not as strong. The cold front's there, the severe weather's there, heavy snow is still there, very strong winds are there. It's just that the snow is a bit going to be lighter in terms of amounts because of how quick the system kind of pulls out of there relatively. Again, it's not going to be a speedy system, just quicker compared to the GFS. There's Hurricane Nicole, which, by the way, you can see the European shows it making landfall on Florida right there early again Thursday, but it doesn't take it back out into the Atlantic. It kind of just skims it. Well, actually, it does. So I guess it would have a double landfall, but it's a lot less further west than the GFS. Regardless, that moisture, that again, the remnants of that, the actual system gets split up into the northeast, and the European makes this a bit more speedy, this movement, than the GFS, so some of the rain amounts are going to be less according to the European. Still impressive. I'll show you those in just a second. And what's consistent with all models is just the colder that moves in behind it. Again, there are some models that start showing maybe some sort of a southern slider, as they say, maybe some snow further towards the south, and again, just a much more of a wintry pattern. Let's just say that much. Let's take a look at this total accumulated precipitation. This includes rain and snow, just everything in general. Again, here's that first part of it that's going on right now. Incredible snowfall amounts across the west. There's that plains part of it, especially. Could be some heavy rain where some of this warm front precipitation gets stuck up for a few days, even raining. That could quickly add up. And across the northeast, obviously, with that rainfall, there could be, amounts easily 3 to 4 or 5 inches, and across Florida as well. If I were to show you the GFS now, because I forgot to show you the rainfall on the GFS, I showed you the snowfall, but not the total precip. Notice that it shows similar amounts to the European, but I would say a bit more significant, and they are a bit more widespread. So a widespread 1 to 3 to 4 inch event of rainfall behind that. So definitely impressive from both models and both perspectives. Let's show you the snowfall from the European. I don't think I showed you that. Getting a little bit caught up here. But yeah, so this is the European snowfall. Again, you can see, even though it's a weaker, slightly version, still up to 13, 14 inches of snow. And again, with those strong winds, that's going to make some of the drifts still be pretty impressive. And the severe weather, you can see this is the biggest day we're concerned about. This is Thursday, and you can see that there are some large cities in this. Kansas City, Des Moines, right? Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas. I kind of put it here twice, but Topeka, Des Moines. So a large population area relatively for this part of the country. 5 million people, and you can see it's a slight. Again, we are still a few days out, so I would not be surprised if there is going to be an enhanced issued for this day. Actually, that's most likely what's going to happen. And again, tomorrow or today, the severe weather threat is limited and mainly focused off to where Hurricane Nicole will be making landfall. But the slight is definitely across these areas the biggest risk, and I'll show you tomorrow what the probabilistic one is, the categorical one, what's the biggest concern. I would assume it's going to be wind and potentially the threat of tornadoes as well, though hail is definitely something also not to disregard. So yeah, it's going to be a big system, an impactful one, a lot of different things to watch for. That's hurricane, that's heavy snow across the plains, that blizzard, heavy snow across the west, and of course that heavy rain across the northeast. So kind of several areas of concern, if you will. And yeah, we'll just have to keep monitoring this. I do want to show you some of the snowfall amounts that already have been reported across California. Notice we're already seeing some 20-inch amounts, many other areas 15, 17, again, and some of these are pretty old. You can see from 7 a.m. today in the morning, and we are now at 7 p.m. You could assume probably this could be even doubled across some of these areas. So yeah, there could be definitely some amounts that are 30, 36. And again, even potentially up to 5 feet of snow, as the National Weather Service said. So that is definitely something impressive. And notice, look at some of these amounts across the Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. Also very, very impressive. And we'll continue seeing these snow amounts being added here once it moves on to the plains. So that is that in terms of the snowfall amounts, the severe weather, the rainfall, the snow. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you. Again, there's a lot of stuff here, so it's hard to make this all compacted into one single video. I do want to show you one last thing. This is the HER model. It's a short-range model, but it's very accurate, and we just got the most latest information kind of process. So I want to show you how this plays out. Again, choose your location on the map, right? Notice this is the times right here. So this is 12 a.m. now. So this is today in the morning at 3, 4, or 5. Notice it quickly moves out of the west, starts developing quite a bit of precipitation across Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, and then eventually out into the plains. Notice Hurricane Nicole across Florida. And then you can see that thing does develop quite a bit of a snowy side, and that cold front starts developing across Iowa Thursday midday. And then we see that the Hurricane Nicole, again, move out back into the Gulf of Mexico, potentially re-intensifying briefly before making landfall yet again on a panhandle. And this is kind of the quick movement of this as I speed this up. One thing I want to show is quite a bit of ice potential across South Dakota initially. Could lead to some, again, troublesome conditions, to say the least. So that's something we'll have to watch for. Do note that If we were to take a look at the snowfall accumulations, again, not entirely done with the system at this time when I'm showing you this, but you can see even through that brief time period, it could be already well over a foot across some areas, and that is going to be potentially exaggerated with some of those very strong winds. Alright, that is it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.